Imagine you're sitting in the cockpit of the fastest, most terrifying fighter jet on the planet. Everyone in the world is scared of this machine. Your bosses think you're a hero, but in your head, you've already decided to betray them. You're not just flying a mission today, you're about to pull off the biggest heist in military history. You have 30 minutes of fuel, a pack of Soviet interceptors chasing you, and no way to turn back. If you mess this up, you're dead. If you make it, you change the world forever. This is the story of a man who decided he'd rather risk a fiery crash than spend one more day in the country he was supposed to protect. It's a cold morning in 1976. At a high-security Soviet airbase, a pilot named Viktor Belenko is walking toward his plane. Now, this isn't just any plane. This is the MiG-25. In the West, they called it the Foxbat, and honestly, it gave American generals nightmares. They thought this thing could outfly and outshoot anything the U.S. had. It was the crown jewel of the Soviet Union. And Viktor? He was one of their best pilots. He was trusted, he was elite, and he was completely fed up. You see, on the outside, Viktor looked like the perfect Soviet officer. He had the uniform, the skills, and a family. But inside, he was done. He saw the corruption, the lies, and how regular people were struggling while the top leaders lived like kings. He didn't just want to run away. He wanted to take something valuable with him, something that would hurt the system that he felt had lied to him his whole life. So he waits for a routine training mission. It's supposed to be simple. Fly out, do some maneuvers, and come back. But Viktor has a different plan. The second he gets into the air, his heart is pounding. He knows that every radar operator in the Soviet Far East is watching his little blip on their screens. He stays on course for a bit, acting totally normal. But then he sees his opening. He banks the plane hard and dives. He drops the jet down to almost ground level. Why? Because if you fly low enough, the radar can't see you easily. It gets lost in the clutter of the ground and the waves of the ocean. He's pushing this massive, heavy jet as fast as it can go, skimming just above the water of the Sea of Japan. Back at the base, the commanders are losing their minds. They're calling him on the radio, screaming for him to respond. "Red 7, come in. You are off course." Viktor hears them, but he doesn't say a word. He reaches over and turns his radio off. From this moment on, he is completely alone. Now this is where it gets really intense. The MiG-25 was built for speed, not for fuel efficiency. It's basically two giant engines with a seat strapped to them. As he's racing toward Japan, he looks at his fuel gauge. It's dropping way faster than he expected. He's pushing the engines so hard that they're literally eating the fuel. He realizes that if he doesn't find a place to land soon, he's going to become a permanent part of the ocean floor. While Viktor is sweating in his cockpit, the Soviet commanders are scrambling. They realize this isn't a mistake, this is a defection. They send out other jets to find him and shoot him down. They'd rather blow up their own top-secret plane than let it land in a foreign country. Imagine being Viktor. You're flying a plane that's basically a flying gas tank. The low fuel light is blinking, and you know your own friends are up there somewhere trying to put a missile into your back. As he approaches the Japanese coast, he has a new problem. Japan's air defense sees an unidentified superfast aircraft heading straight for them. They don't know if it's an attack or a mistake. They scramble their own F-4 Phantoms to intercept him. So now Viktor has the Soviets behind him and the Japanese in front of him. He's caught in the middle of a Cold War nightmare. He pops up out of the clouds to find an airport. He's looking for anything with a flat surface. He spots Hakodate Airport. It's a civilian spot, not meant for heavy military jets. The runway is way too short for a MiG-25, which needs a lot of space to slow down. But Viktor doesn't have a choice. His engines are literally sputtering. He's out of gas. He lines up for the landing. He's coming in way too fast. He hits the tarmac so hard the plane bounces. Smoke is coming off the tires. He's heading straight for the end of the runway, towards a busy road with cars on it. He deploys his parachute, slams on the brakes, and the plane finally skids to a halt, stopping just feet away from the airport fence. He's alive. He actually made it. He climbs out of the jet, and imagine the look on the faces of the people at the airport. They're just waiting for their flights, and suddenly the world's most secret Soviet fighter jet is sitting on their runway. Viktor pulls out a pistol and fires a couple of shots into the air to keep people back until the authorities arrive. When they finally get to him, he tells them in broken English, "I want to go to America." This created a massive international mess. The Soviets were demanding their plane back immediately. They were making threats, saying there would be serious consequences. But the Japanese and the Americans knew they had just been handed the keys to the kingdom. This leads us into the part of the story that people often talk about when they ask why the USSR's most feared jet was a total sham. For years, the U.S. thought the MiG-25 was made of titanium and filled with advanced computers. When the American engineers finally got their hands on it, they started taking it apart piece by piece. They were laughing and scratching their heads at the same time. The plane wasn't made of titanium. It was mostly made of stainless steel. It was heavy and clunky. And the electronics? They weren't using microchips like the West. They were using old-school vacuum tubes, the kind you'd find in an old 1950s radio. At first, the Americans thought the Soviets were just backwards, but then they realized something brilliant. Vacuum tubes are actually way more durable than chips when it comes to a nuclear blast. If a nuclear bomb went off in the U.S., the electromagnetic pulse would fry every American plane's brain, but the Soviet MiG would keep flying just fine. It was low-tech on purpose. However, the superweapon myth was officially busted. The jet couldn't actually fly as fast as the West thought without destroying its own engines. It was a bluff that had worked for years, and Viktor Belenko had just exposed the whole thing. This is exactly the pilot who stole a secret Soviet jet, story that changed the entire balance of the Cold War. The U.S. realized they didn't need to be as scared as they were, and they adjusted their whole military strategy based on what they found inside Viktor's stolen plane. But let's talk about the man himself for a second. While the engineers were playing with his plane, Viktor was being moved to a secret location. He was eventually flown to the United States. He got what he wanted, freedom, but it came at a massive cost. The Soviet Union was so angry that they didn't just let his family go. He had a wife and a son back home. He never saw them again. The KGB spent years trying to find him, hoping to get revenge. He had to change his name, move around, and live in the shadows for a long time. He once walked into an American supermarket for the first time and thought it was a setup. He thought the CIA had put out all the food just to trick him because he couldn't believe a regular store could have that many choices. In the USSR, you had to wait in line for hours just for a loaf of bread. To him, a simple grocery store was more impressive than the fighter jet he had stolen. In the end, Japan eventually gave the plane back to the Soviets, but they didn't just hand it over. They took it apart, put the pieces into big wooden crates, and sent it back like a DIY furniture kit. They even sent a bill to the Soviet Union for the shipping costs and the damage Viktor did to the runway. It was the ultimate insult. Viktor lived out the rest of his life in America. He became a consultant, helped the military understand how Soviet pilots thought, and eventually he just became a regular guy living the American dream. He died not too long ago, but his 30-minute flight remains one of the most daring things anyone has ever done. He didn't just change his own life, he tore down the curtain of secrecy that the Soviet Union had spent billions of dollars building. It's wild to think that one man, a few gallons of fuel, and a lot of guts could change the course of history like that.
It just goes to show that no matter how much technology a country has, the most unpredictable thing will always be the person sitting in the pilot's seat. If you found this story as incredible as I did, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow so I can keep bringing you these deep dives into the craziest moments in history. And if you want to make sure you don't miss the next one, go ahead and subscribe to Ethereal Bygoner. We've got a lot more stories coming your way that you definitely won't want to miss. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.